if you're renting a house, like, everybody has this plan to buy a house and then they can rent it out. They make it sound so easy. They make it sound like everybody can, like, it's just a sure bet. And buying a house is a sure bet. And I get from the investment side. What scares me is when anybody talks about an investment, that it's a sure bet. And right now in real estate, I feel like everybody's talking about real estate like it's a sure bet. And it worries me because if you rewind to before 2008, before the crash, I felt it was the same way. Shut that kid up. All right, so the Barcast, for you who are joining us. The basic premise behind the Barcast is I want to give a little bit of background because there may be some new people. Started as kind of our journey and us discussing our journey of entrepreneurship, and really to kind of discuss what we're going through at times, right? Talk about the highs, the lows, and hopefully show people that they're not the only ones going through what they're going through, right?
Right.
And you see the glamour of entrepreneurship on digital media, but I always say, like, entrepreneurship is lonely. It's like it can be very lonely and stressful and challenging. And so hopefully as well through this podcast, Barcast, that people can not feel like they're alone. We're starting to movement, people.
That was a very good job.
Yeah,
usually I'm the lead in. That was pretty good. No, I think that was pretty good.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
That's right. For our YouTube watchers, please like and subscribe to the channel. This is a relaunch. If you guys are visiting for the first time, the Barcast used to live on my personal channel. We decided to give it its own identity. And so, yeah, we're in our first season in Baltimore. Our next season is potentially going to be in location TBA.
I think I know. I feel 95% sure where we're going.
I feel pretty good about it too, but I want to kind of leave everybody in suspense.
Yeah.
So, but nevertheless, we have a guest today.
Yes.
And I think it's probably best if you go ahead and introduce her.
Yeah. So I'm excited for our guest today. So today we have Ashira, and Ashira is a friend of mine, full disclosure. Ashira, the reason why I'm interested in having her on and excited about having her on is because we talk a lot about relationships and relationships in our business. And Ashira and I have only talked about it a little bit, but in like our pre-production call, but I've always been observing her. I've noticed that like that's a huge component of her business is the relationship part of it. So I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about that. Hopefully talk a little bit about real estate, and obviously business, and then talk about her background. So without further ado, Ashira.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
So I'm excited. So I'm going to set you up.
Okay.
And you told us a little bit about your background. So I'll set it up, and then I'll let you take it from there. So correct me if anything I say is incorrect.
Okay.
So obviously you currently own your own business, but to back it up, you had discussed how you kind of came from a family of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And you yourself kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit very young, right?
Yes.
You talked about Girl Scouts. You had started sort of like it seems like you kind of fell into business, and it just naturally, like as you tried to do other things, you dipped your toe in like social work, but you sort of got inevitably gravitationally pulled to entrepreneurship. And you were very successful in sales, and then you ended up landing in real estate and starting your own business. So why don't you pick it up from like what you do currently and how you started your business?
All right. Well, thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here. Yeah. So currently I am running a real estate team. I have 4 full-time agents, 2 part-time agents, 2 full-time administrative staff that we pay salary. And our group is averaging about $30 million in local volume through real estate.
Damn.
That is crazy.
I don't know. Like, I can't put it
means.
into context, but it sounds like a lot of money.
I mean, so that means that's the number of volume in houses that we sell. So if you take $300,000 houses and you divide 30 million, you get your number. It's like that would be 100 houses.
That's still really awesome.
Yeah. So given that the median price in Baltimore is about $250, give or take, we have $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 sales. We have $100,000, $200,000 sales. So that is where we are this year. We have some pretty big, audacious goals, like we like to call them, for this next year coming up, somewhere between the $40 to $50 million mark.
Nice.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
To just think about a number like that,
Yeah. So, but when you have a team and you have cohesiveness within your group and you have the leverage with an admin staff, that doesn't feel as crazy as it sounds. So we work together really well, and we've gotten that unity over years of working together. And I think that the biggest part of getting to that point has been really choosing who we bring on our boat very carefully.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years that the interview process and really vetting whoever we even anticipate as a potential agent to join our team, we really take our time. I go through like a 3-4 part interview process with them. And sometimes we get someone on our team and we can tell right away it's not a fit.
Yeah.
And over time we've gotten much better. And by we, I mean myself and my operations manager. Her name is Amanda. Hi, Amanda. She's amazing, and she and I sort of share a brain, and we can tell pretty quickly if we have someone that's not a fit. They're not doing the things that we've set out for them to do to help them be successful. We give benchmarks, 30, 60, 90-day benchmarks.
Yeah.
And when they're bucking the systems and or bucking the goals that we've set for them or giving us attitude or whatever it is, and we have to remind them, hey, you are the one who gave us these goals. We're trying to help you reach them. We realize pretty early on that they're probably not going to make it with us. So
Yeah.
we kind of part ways quickly.
So there's so much we could talk about.
There's a lot
And I
we
want
could
to
go
talk
into.
about. And we've
Sure.
kind of narrowed it down a little bit. Before we get into that, and talk a little bit about real estate, and then we can talk about the business side of it. And then, in the middle, I might bust your ass at a toast, but
That's fine.
That's neither here nor there. But before we even get started, there's so many things I need to say, and I'm
Okay.
trying to figure out just 2 or 3 things I want to say.
Okay.
So the first thing is it frustrating to you? I don't even know if you experience this, but like people's misconceptions about Baltimore, because
yeah.
anytime I tell people I'm from Baltimore when I'm out of town, there's this sort of like look and
Yeah.
whatever. But anybody that
The Wire.
visit-
Everybody
Yeah.
says The Wire.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody that visits me is so surprised. They love it. Nobody's ever come here and not had a good time.
Yeah.
And I love Baltimore, and I know you love Baltimore.
Yes.
So what are your feelings on Baltimore, and just talk in general? Because I'd imagine that it might be maybe it's a little bit more challenging, but also I think you appreciate Baltimore, and like, is that like, just talk about that experience a little bit.
Yeah, so it's very mixed right now. I have people and friends and even family members in other states who are considering making big moves, either across country or from DC to Baltimore, because it's less expensive here. They can take the MARC train, and they've been priced out of DC, but they find this as like almost like a smaller DC or how Brooklyn's sort of the smaller Manhattan.
Right.
And I think that there are a lot of misconceptions, and then there's also a lot of facts, right? So Baltimore is a beautiful place filled with wonderful people. So much here to do. The culinary, the restaurants, the beautiful harbor, the downtown architecture. There's so much to appreciate here. There's also a ton of opportunity, right? So speaking for myself, I came from San Jose, the Bay Area. And a lot of my friends and family that I grew up with have been priced out of our own hometown. So for me to even go back and live a life in my own hometown, I have to make $300,000 just to live a normal lifestyle.
That's crazy. When you think
It
about
is.
and DC's getting to be to that point too,
Yeah, it is. And, everybody's living 45 minutes to an hour outside of those areas and having to commute 2 to 3 hours in to their jobs just to even be a part of it. I just don't think at some point there becomes like a quality of life balance where that just doesn't make sense anymore. So circling it back to Baltimore, you can live a really nice life here. You can have a nice house in a nice neighborhood with wonderful neighbors, plenty to do, but we are a city of neighborhoods, and you can take a turn here nor there and be in a place that you might not feel so comfortable late at night.
I was going to ask you about that because, do you find that maybe it's challenging to take on, a house to either put it up for sale or maybe even to show in certain areas? Is there do you find that challenging to take that on?
The real answer?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, there are definitely neighborhoods that agents feel very uncomfortable going into, and having houses for sale in, because you just don't know. You can't really fully trust that if you have an open house, someone's going to come in there with a bad intention.
Right.
And I know there's a lot of politics and a lot of beliefs around what's happening in Baltimore and why. I do think that the city has a ton of potential, and with the right leadership and with plenty of people who are choosing to stay in the city and work it out and be good members of society, I think that with the right recipe, the city can be amazing. So it's going to take some time because we're sort of on a slippery slope, right? Like it's almost quarter to quarter where there's a lot of issues and then there's nothing, and everybody's just having nothing but great things to say about us. And we're sort of in this pendulum swing of good and bad, it feels like. So
I think it's interesting that you bring up leadership too, because there has been a lot of that, and it doesn't really help the situation, right? Because when you have investigations going on with mayors and stuff like that, it's like, oh, well, here we go again. It's just typical Baltimore. But I think what a lot of the general public don't realize is the actual people that live in Baltimore. Just being out here in the Fells area, and just I've never felt unsafe out here, and it's just there's what goes on that everybody sees, and then there's what goes on that everybody doesn't see. And so sometimes I think there's just this overgeneralization of what Baltimore is and what it truly is.
yeah, agreed.
I couldn't agree more. Like I don't know what's it gonna take for me to leave. I have a daughter, a 6-year-old daughter, and I live right here, But with that said, there are neighborhoods where I wouldn't feel comfortable living. However, this area, I feel like there's certain areas that they step it up even more. Like, so,
but I think that's, and that's just with any city, and I think there's pockets in any city that you're not going to want to walk. It doesn't matter what city it is, New York, Detroit, Chicago.
You can go to DC and it's the same thing.
Exactly.
You drive, 8 blocks into one direction and you're in a totally different environment.
Right.
And it really is about the community, the local community associations, people getting involved. I've been community president of my neighborhood association, vice president, member at large. I had a lot of, I learned a lot during those times, made a lot of connections, and really fought for certain things to be rectified within our community. It's a ton of work, right? So we all have our jobs, we all have our families, we all have our social life, or just things that we have going on, and then you add like, oh wait, I need to go and fight for my community on top of all of that. But the truth is, you do. And if more people would get involved and more people would actually show care, I think that we'd see some turnaround.
Hell yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
All right,
love
so
that.
here's my next thing.
That really went down a hole, but I think it was a good conversation.
No, it was a good conversation. This is my next frustration, and I'm really interested in your answer.
Okay.
I hear this all the time, and it's dual parts. So depending on who you speak to, everybody's always going to like paint this blue sky picture, right? Mm-hmm. Like if they own a house, they'll tell you every reason why it's a great time to buy, whatever. If you're renting a house, like, everybody has this plan to buy a house, and then they can rent it out. They make it sound so easy. They make it sound like everybody can, like, it's just a sure bet. And buying a house is a sure bet. And I get from the investment side. What scares me is when anybody talks about an investment, that it's a sure bet. And right now in real estate, I feel like everybody's talking about real estate like it's a sure bet. And it worries me because if you rewind to before 2008, before the crash, I felt it was the same way, where you just bought a house and that was it, and it doesn't feel like there's that due diligence.
It's a big word in the real estate industry.
It's a big word everywhere.
It is a big word. But that it's just like there doesn't seem anything backing those arguments. Eventually, we know that markets go up and down, so eventually there will be a dip. I'm not saying there'll be a crash, but how is the market?
Well, I
for
think
real?
I think there is an active correction happening, and I'm not going to call it a dip, but we were in a bullish market. We've been in a bullish market for about 8 to 10 years now, right? So 2008, 2009 was like the bottom where things really just kind of fell out. We all know that, right?
Right.
I was in the real estate market at that time. I was actively selling houses. I had a newborn baby, my first daughter, and it was very tough. I saw a lot of agents leave the business, go get regular jobs. I saw a lot of people struggle being underwater, anywhere from $30 to $50 to $100,000 in communities like Camden, Canton, Fells Point. They bought in 2004, 2005, 2006 these houses for $350, $375 were now worth $275.
That's crazy.
$300, and they were our age, so they were like 32,
right,
with a young family and $100,000 under debt. So what do they do with that, right? So that all really sort of hit ahead 2008, 9, 10, those years. We hit bottom. A lot of things happened within the lending community. They put a whole lot of new laws into place to try to protect people. We had the subprime issues that they were trying to correct, and it was just a mess. So our market, Baltimore, got flooded with foreclosures and short sales. Do you remember that? I don't know if you.
Yeah.
I feel like you definitely.
Yeah.
That's actually when I met you and Sabrina and different friends in our group. And as a realtor, you get a lot of calls. Hi, I want to invest in a property, right? I see this foreclosure over here in this neighborhood, and can we go check it out? And a lot of first-time investors. Now, some people do really well, right? A lot of people get in over their head their first time. And I have counseled a ton of clients away from making that purchase, because what they don't realize is there's a lot that can happen once they take a wall down and find out that there's some corroded pipe stack, or the God forbidden mold word, or just whatever it is.
Well, especially in this area, because it's the oldest part of the country.
Yeah.
And so you just never know what's going to be behind there, layers and layers of building upon whatever, and then they just put Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid.
Exactly. And one of the biggest things that we see in these old row homes is people take down the drywall, and the brick behind the drywall is all uneven, falling apart.
Right, yeah.
So you have structural issues right off the back, which are, can be $10, $20, $30, $40,000 that they're not expecting, and they walk away. So then now they have a foreclosure on their record, and the house has another foreclosure on its record. And so then we become this sort of revolving sea of distressed homes and people losing money on properties. So that's the ugly side. The good side are when people just either luck up on a property that they make a good profit on, or they get a really good interest rate and or loan package. Their monthly mortgage is low, and they do rent it out, and they do their due diligence. Either they use a realtor to help them vet their renter, which involve things like background checks, calling their past tenants, vetting their employment. You would be amazed at the people that these newbie landlords let into their property.
Yeah.
And 6 months in, they're not paying their rent anymore. They essentially start to squat, and then they've got to get them evicted through the court system, and then that's a mess. But there are the people who do the due diligence, get a good person in there, can rent it out for a few $100s more per month than their mortgage, and they don't touch that money. They sit it into an account, they pay the mortgage, and they let that money accrue. So if there is a major problem, they have the money to pay for it. And then, 5 or 10 years later, they want to sell the property because it has increased in value, and they make a little something, and then they can go do it again, or they just have some money that they can go reinvest somewhere else. So it's not all, sunshine and rainbows.
Oh.
Is that a trigger?
I just did a post on Instagram yesterday titled Sunshine and Rainbows.
Okay, well, there you go.
It's my Rocky impersonation if anybody wants to hear. Anybody?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah. Hello.
Sounds like Rodney Dangerfield.
Don't.
It
You
does.
ain't going to believe this. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows.
Oh.
It's a mean and nasty place. And I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees
Oh,
and keep you there if you let it.
yes, it will. Yes, it will.
Is that Rocky?
Lord
Is
Jesus.
that good, Rocky?
Oh my
Is that
god.
good? What do you
It's
think?
good. It's good.
It was better. It
Worthy
was better.
of an IG post for sure.
It was a
IG worthy.
3-minute Rocky
Oh my gosh.
monologue that
And
I
his
did.
daughter was not impressed at all.
She's staring at him in the corner like, seriously, Dad.
Right.
She literally does not respond to any of my antics at all. She's so
She's
used
numb to it by
She'll
now.
get there. She'll get there. My daughter just turned 9 and she's hilarious. She actually gets in the action now, where before she'd sit there like, what are they talking about? My parents
Well,
are crazy.
so here's my logic.
Yeah.
So logic, when you talk about business and supply and demand,
Yeah.
there's not a ton of people moving to Baltimore. There's not.
No.
But
There's
it seems like
people moving out.
yeah. And so but I feel like there's these condos and these apartment complexes that keep coming in. So as a landlord or as somebody anticipating renting a property, it seems like this would be not the best time. Obviously, if you get a great property, but it wouldn't seem ideal.
I think
What
the
you
last
say.
3 to 5 years was the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think right now people should probably not be a novelist investor. I think they should probably take a back seat, let the people who have been doing it for a while, who can afford to take a $30,000, $40,000 risk if it doesn't
Yeah.
work out, and play their hand if it's a sure bet. Which, again, we don't have a crystal ball, so it's really hard to predict if it's a sure bet. But
Yeah.
there are some investors that are investments that are obviously safer than others.
Okay, so I want to ask our guest about their investing. And you're the resident investing expert. Shout out to Own the Chaos YouTube channel.
That's right. On the chaos.
Yeah. But what do you invest in? Do you invest in real estate? Do you invest in anything beyond real estate?
So currently, I have 2 kids in private school, and we just bought our move-up house, right? We were in our first home for 11 years. And so what I have invested in year over year is my business more than anything. We do have one secondary home that I was just saying a little bit ago, one of our parents lives in currently, and that works out really, really well for her. And so other than that, we have scratched the surface at buying properties and attempting to get in there
Yeah.
with the contractors and do the flips. We almost bought a beach house in Ocean City last year, but each time we have friends who are in the financial industry, financial planners and whatnot, and we had them look at the numbers with us. We just were very, very careful before pulling
Yeah.
the trigger. And then there's APR rates that play a big part in that. And you just have to be really, really ready to assume that risk. So I've decided to continuously invest in my business, and my husband sort of does our money marketing accounts.
I love that. Reinvest in your business. That's very.
Oh yeah,
very
100%. There's nothing. I mean, if you're reinvesting in your business, you can't go wrong, no matter what you do. So,
Yep.
Well, a long, long time ago,
as long as you're
I-
investing in the right stuff. Let's
Right.
let's be
Yeah.
clear.
I made a
Just start throwing
decision
money.
that I wanted to work for myself and get out everything I put into my own business, right? So whenever I see an opportunity, and also investing in yourself, right? So going to those weekend-long seminars, or
Yeah.
the Simon Sinek's of the world, the Patrick Lencioni's, the Tony Robbins,
TED Talks are my
Unleash the
favorite.
Power, all those types of things. I have placed a heavy emphasis on all of that sort of self-learning and self-growth over the past like 4 or 5 years. That's been a big part of my business model for not only me, but for my agents too. I've sort of forced them to go to 8-week-long training sessions.
Yeah.
One of them is called Bold, and they all will know what that's about. Everybody who knows it knows it. But just different programs along the way that has helped everybody grow as an individual so that they could grow professionally.
So you make all of your agents go to that training?
I do.
What is it, like a leadership training or specifically real estate focused?
That particular one is real estate focused, and
Okay.
it's also personal growth. It's about growing outside of your comfort zone and learning about who you are, digging deeper, really figuring out what your goals are, what you want out of why do you get up every day? Why do you go to work every day? What is the money for? What are you doing this for? Why not just go work a 9 to 5 and have a boss and get paid salary and go home and clock out every night? Why are you taking a risk and doing a commission-only job where there's no guarantee and everything is based around your relationships that you build with other people? Why do all that? So we just try to really focus on having them dig deep and figure out their why.
I love it.
Yeah.
Little cynic.
Yeah. Oh, all day.
Cynic
Figuring out the why. We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, and then we have to get to this toast.
Okay.
The other thing is that the why is important for them, but it's also the why is the clearest way to determine alignment, right? Like,
Oh, 100%.
if I know my why and you know your why, it's really clear, then it makes it easier to figure out if you're aligned or not, which to me, is the most important thing. Alignment. If you don't have alignment, you're screwed.
He preaches that all the time. And I
You're
don't
screwed.
disagree. I don't disagree.
You just don't agree.
I do agree.
Oh, okay.
We're aligned in that.
When someone says they don't disagree, it's like when someone says, well, you're not wrong,
Right.
But
but you're not right.
But see, if
It's
there's
like
a
those
but,
guys
you
that are
make
like-
everything
It
in the-
does.
in
it's
the-
like when everybody starts a conversation with, I'm not trying to be an asshole.
Yeah.
You know that they're going to be an asshole.
Yeah.
So in
No
one of
disrespect.
these trainings, there's 2 words that they don't want you to use, and the biggest one is but, because every time you say the word but in a sentence, it negates everything before it.
Yes.
Not unless you say, well, sorry, I can't do that.
Okay. But they replace it with and. So a lot of people who have been through this training,
Okay.
they will say and they'll almost emphasize the and. And I don't necessarily love it, but but I don't necessarily love it, but
Yeah.
and I have learned that it's true. A lot of times you're teeing up.
Yeah. I guess it's and I've gone through this before too, where if something needs improvement, instead of telling somebody that this needs work or whatever, areas of opportunity has been another buzzword that people like to use, and it's
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that either. I understand the need and the reason to use it, but at the same time, it's people need to know that they need to improve in areas, and they don't know if they necessarily perceive it as quote unquote opportunity.
Can I give my piece on this? Because this
Yes.
fires me. I want to do a segment called Fire Me Up. I just go on a rant for 60 seconds. I understand, and I think that there's a place for it. So I think for new business people, it's good. It's simple.
Yeah.
It's foundational. It's like the build, break, build, or the compliment sandwich. If you have somebody who's been in the game long enough, they're gonna be able to sniff that out. Where you give the build, break, build. Do you know?
Yes.
Okay, so you're giving a positive, and then you're actually doing something corrective in the middle, and then you end with a positive to reinforce. So it's you kind of sneak give something.
Right.
And so somebody like you, I wouldn't be able to do that. You'd figure it out. And
Yes.
so that's my one point. My first point is, if you've been in the game long enough, you're going to know that's BS.
Right. I was
Some
just
sort of
about to say.
strategy.
Right.
100%.
The second part is that if you're a manager, then you have to understand that everybody operates differently. So the same person that you may need to sort of say things in a soft manner, you could use that approach, but then another person just wants to be shoot me straight, give it to me.
Yes.
Sounds too appropriate.
Keep going.
But there are certain people, and as a coach, you know who you can be tough on, you know who you could shoot straight, and you could be blunt with, and then other people you got to kind of coddle and maybe not whatever. So it's not
Can
a
I
one
say
size
something
fits
on that?
all.
Can I say something on that?
Yeah, I'm done with my fire.
Well
It
done,
also-
sir. Well
It
done.
also depends on how well that other person knows you.
True.
Because
Preach.
if you are coming at them a certain way and they don't really know your true intention with them and that you actually mean really well, they take it as a defense and they automatically go on the defense and then they shut down.
Yep.
So if they actually know and trust you and actually respect your level of understanding of whatever the topic is that you're trying to coach them on, then they'll listen. But if there's a loss of respect there in any way, for whatever reason, whether it's their own belief on things or if there's any question where they're asking if you are really there for their best intention, they're not going to hear what you have to say.
Yes. Finally, somebody that gets it.
Yeah, and that's taken me...
Have you read Radical Candor? Because I feel
No.
like that was taken... Like,
Nope.
she just ripped some pages
No.
right out.
Read Radical Candor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Read it. Oh,
Okay.
so good.
Yeah.
Have you guys read The Ideal Team Player? Or
No.
Five
No, I've not.
Dysfunctions of a Team? It's
I've
Patrick
read
Lencioni.
the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Awesome stuff. So,
Oh, links in the description.
yeah.
We're going to get this affiliate
Don't
game
forget
going.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So with all that energy, I feel like it's only appropriate that we do the people's toast or the toast competition.
Toast competition.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, what do you think?
brought me this
I did.
snazzy little. Is this a gift? I don't know if
Yeah.
it's considered a gift. It's a
Sure, why not?
It's a
Like a little
surprise.
microphone on it. It's super
Yeah,
cute.
that's our logo. So the
Really nice.
Barcast, they can't see this, but the Barcast logo, little wooden box
Yep.
with our shot glasses with the logo on it.
Yeah.
So we're going to use this puppy. But we got our Jack Daniels bottle, number 1A.
Yep.
We are the proud recipients of 1A. Do you know about the Jack Daniels Club?
No.
You don't know about the Jack
I
Daniels
don't.
Club?
I don't know if anybody watching or listening probably knows about the
No.
Jack Daniels Club.
Woo!
So we should probably go over this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. This is so. I used to run the horse.
This is a Baltimore treasure right here.
Yeah, so I feel like I can say I played a role in this.
Okay.
But we started the Jack Daniels Club years ago, and the whole idea was like it's a saloon atmosphere. So we wanted it to feel like a Western where you come in, buy your bottle, and you own the bottle. So you can buy a bottle. If you go up front, you walk right by them. There's
Yeah.
hundreds of bottles.
Yes.
So this is bottle 1A, the very first bottle.
Oh.
When I started the club, it used to be the management bottle, and I pulled some strings, and it's now the Barcast bottle. So you can see,
Nice.
Own the Chaos is his channel. It
Nice.
should actually say.
It'll say we'll change it. We'll change it.
And so, like, if you came in, so like,
Yeah.
let's say you had your company, you're like, I want to buy a bottle for your company. What's your
Yeah.
company name?
The Key Home Team.
The Key Home Team. You'd start when the Key Home Team. You could have any of your clients come in, and you're not around. You just give them the password. Tell them the bottle number, password, and it's all covered.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So, and there's other perks for being in the club. Did you know that the horse you came in on sells the most Jack Daniels per square foot in the world? You didn't even let me finish it.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
In Maryland, it sells the most Jack Daniels, period. But it's like the top 25 in the country, like just pure sales when you think about huge venues that are out there. Yeah. So
Shout out Jack Daniels.
yeah, this is our bottle. This is from our bottle. So without further ado, we're going to do the toast competition. Do you want to break that down for the people?
Yeah. So what we've done in the past. Now you've already seen a couple episodes where we didn't have it. The reason we haven't done it because we weren't quite sure how we wanted to execute it, but we're just gonna wing it and go for it.
Okay.
In the past, I come up with a toast. Christian comes up with a toast.
You don't come up with a toast. You
No.
Google search a toast.
I generate a toast. Christian
you repeat a toast.
creates a toast. And
Original content.
And now we have you, and nobody knows what the toast is going to be. So
Yeah.
we're hearing it for the first time. So we kind of get the initial reaction.
Okay.
So how do you want to do this? Do you want to do the honors or?
Well, we have a guest, so I think
I was gonna
Guess to
say
give it
yeah.
a
I was thinking it, but
we'll defer to you. So it's like football. You've won the coin toss,
Right.
so you can defer or you can go ahead and do your toast.
I'll do my toast.
Okay.
let's do it.
All right. Well, we were talking about business, building teams, entrepreneurship, lonely, success, and all of those things. So, in partially the words of Patrick Lencioni, who is one of the authors we talked about earlier, my toast is going to circle around and say, stay humble, stay hungry, stay people smart, and everything else falls into place. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, so
I like it.
we don't drink yet.
I like it.
Okay.
My toast.
We're just about to go downhill real quick. Hers was nice
No,
and
no, 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 no.
inspirational, and
Not inappropriate and no long monologue. I just want to reiterate. My toasts are Oh wait, where am I looking? I'm looking right here. My toasts are
You can look anywhere.
always original. I come up with them, and I like when we have guests.
Yeah.
I like to kind of theme them out to the guests. So this is real estate
Okay.
themed, and it's also short and sweet. When the markets dip, let's buy and flip.
Ooh,
I like that.
it.
I like
that.
it.
No, seriously, let's pool our money together and buy. And flip.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
I'm with you.
So I'm bringing this one back because
Are you doing a repeat?
I am doing a repeat. You know why? Because I screwed it up the first time.
Okay.
So now I'm going to say it the right time.
You
because
get
last
one
time
chance.
I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but I was like, I got a lot of looks.
Ah.
And you'll know what I mean when I
Okay.
say it.
All right.
Here's the always staying positive and testing negative.
Oh, all right. Touche.
What'd you say?
The backstory was always testing positive.
Oh. And staying.
Yeah.
And being negative.
But I was just going to always test positive.
All right,
so
cheers.
I had to do it over again just to gratification.
Oof. Yes.
Good old Jack.
I haven't had a sip of alcohol since the last time. Wait, last time we recorded, we didn't have a sip. I haven't
No.
had a sip of alcohol in 2020. That was my first sip.
Really?
In 2020. Yes.
I might
Yes.
be with you.
That was not my
actually.
first sip of 2020. You didn't even have like champagne, none of you on New Year's, nothing like that?
No, I didn't.
No.
Actually, I take that back. I have had some champagne.
That's okay.
Yep, that's okay.
That doesn't really
Little
count
wine.
though.
That's alcohol.
Let's talk business now.
Okay.
Let's get in my wheelhouse.
So there you have it, guys.
Por favor.
Let us know, though, who had the better toast, and, we'll put it up to a vote.
I'm pretty sure it's either myself or Ashira.
That's probably true.
And now we know about Bottle 1A.
That's right. Now we know
I
about
did
Bottle
not know
1A.
that.
You
All
didn't
these
know?
years in
Yeah.
Baltimore, 20 plus years, I didn't know.
In a later podcast, we're going to go real in depth with that. I think we want to
Yeah.
bring that back to the service because we've talked about it in the past, but it was never like the focal point of a podcast. But I really want to like get into.
Well,
How
you
he
know there's a
started all
chartreuse
that.
bar in Baltimore.
No, I didn't know.
There's a chartreuse bar in Baltimore, and there was One-Eyed Mike's, which was the Grand Marnier bar.
Right.
So
That's kind of how this was
Jack
inspired, right?
Daniels, yeah.
Yeah, so like when I started it, I mean it came from like the inspiration came from One-Eyed Mike's, and I actually called Mike like for his blessing because I'm like
Yeah.
we're right next door.
Right.
But it kind of became cool because then it was like the thing where I think we helped each other out. And a lot of people don't know, but the Point, which is right a block and a half away from us, they do Jameson. So they have a Jameson bottle club.
Oh, I didn't know that.
My old assistant general manager, shout out to Trent, who will be on season 6. I don't know. Whenever we go
Season
down to
6.
Florida,
I got
he owns Whiskey Neat, but he was consulting and he went, he got them started up on their club.
Oh, nice. That's
So, yeah,
awesome.
he used to be my manager here, and then he implemented a similar format. So, yeah, if you want GM, Jack, or Jameson, you're good, right?
Yeah.
Within a few blocks of each other. So, and then who was the chartreuse bar?
They closed.
Oh,
They closed, and I can't think of the name.
sorry, I didn't
right
mean to
now.
put you on the
It's okay.
spot.
No, that's all right.
All right, so business. Let's talk business.
I can Google it real quick and get you that.
No, that's all good.
Yeah, so now I want to get into the entrepreneurship. And I want to start with tell me about how your entrepreneurship journey has been. It's a very open-ended question.
Well, I'd say a huge learning curve, one that I'm grateful for and I feel blessed to have had at this point in my life. I can't remember. No, I did not meet you during City Paper times.
No.
So I worked for the Baltimore City Paper for the better part of 10 years before becoming a full-time agent, and that was sort of my lead into the real estate market. I was managing the real estate section of the paper, so everybody that I talked to on a daily basis were agents, brokers, builders, property managers, the new sky-rises that were coming into town, condo buildings. We held all the first opening parties, back then called Illuminate, which was an art event and amazing. I was lucky enough to be at the forefront of all of that when it was happening before newspapers took a dive. So at that time, I was working really, really hard for an organization, and I loved my job. But at the same time, I knew I was really good at building business, and I wanted to build my own business. If I was going to work that hard for someone, I wanted to give myself no ceilings and do it for myself and my family. So that was sort of...
What was the timeline? So when you start thinking about it until you made the leap, what was that? How long did it take you to make the leap?
I'd say of the 8 years I was with City Paper, the last 3 years.
Wow, 3 years.
But 2 years, and I went and took the real estate course, and I didn't do anything with it for a year because I had that cushion. I had that cushion of...
Like the safety net?
Yeah. I mean, I had insurance. I was making really great money. I was in my, late 20s. Had the key to the city, so to speak. Like anywhere we went, I mean, we were just treated really well, and it was a lot of fun. I worked with people that I really cared for and just loved my job. But I worked really hard. Sometimes 50, 60-hour weeks, sometimes more. It was special issue season.
Well, and we've talked about this before. I think that set you up for a really good start because of the kind of network that you're able to build that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially getting to something like real estate, everybody's looking for one, a real estate agent, I mean. And so, if they knew you as a friend, they probably would have more than likely reached out to you. Did you experience that because of those relationships that you created?
So what I've found is that getting started in real estate is, it can be really difficult, even if you know a lot of people. And the reason is, the learning curve is like this. So that first year in real estate, I mean, you're learning so much. Every single day you're learning.
Right.
And you need to be knowledgeable and experienced to be able to guide people because they're trusting you with the largest purchase of their life. I mean, when are you going to buy something more than the house that you either currently live in, will be living in, or investing in?
I mean, I'm probably going to buy a Lambo before I buy a house.
That sounds smart.
So
no, I'm just teasing. Yeah. Right.
I'll drive.
And we have to be able to trust ourselves as the agents to guide people properly, too. So that first couple of years, I'd say, are hard. And even if people know you, love you, and trust you, the question is, do they know you, love you, and trust you as their realtor?
Yeah, right.
And in order to be able to sell that to them, you need to believe in yourself first.
That's a good point. I think there's something to be said for, like, if you are almost too close to somebody, it's kind of like doing business with family. It's just like, it's kind of something you just don't do. Or, working with a significant other every day, that type of thing. So, I think that it brings that kind of dynamic to it.
It does.
So if you are somebody that's kind of like a stranger that doesn't have as close of a personal connection, then it might help in a certain way.
If we're talking about real estate in particular, I will say this: it's one of the most unique and almost strangest relationships you'll ever have with someone, because when you're helping someone either go on the journey to buy a house or to sell their house, you are in conversations and communication with these people sometimes daily, right? And it might only be for 4 months or 6 months, or sometimes it's only 2 or 3 months, and there's multiple points of communication throughout a day. Sometimes text messages and phone calls and back and forth happening, especially when you're under contract or negotiating inspections. And you talk to these people so much, we're in each other's lives. They know if my daughter's sick and home from school. I know if they had a day off from work because there was a big work event. Like, everybody's personal things that are happening to them, and it's a very short period of time. And then when the transaction is closed, you don't talk as much because then they're busy painting their house. They're excited to be in, and we still try to communicate and keep in touch, and we have client events to bring everyone together. But it's just a really unique relationship with your realtor.
The industry is interesting, and I think hospitality is incredibly interesting, and I draw a lot of parallels in certain ways with real estate, and a lot of people that are in the industry and hospitality, I've seen transition to real estate. But it's an interesting industry because, and this is just outsider looking in, there's a lot of people coming and going, and there's a lot of people who are not traditionally trained, which can be dangerous. It's cool because there's a low barrier to entry, but it's also, there aren't people who spent their whole career or their whole lives studying to get here, right? They didn't go to school. Some people may have, but most people didn't get their degree in this or a master's. So it's different. The interesting thing about real estate is you're running a business, but you're also a real estate agent. And so like that's got to be challenging. So talk about the experience of trying to run a business, but also trying to manage your clients.
Sure. So I feel like on any given day I wear 3 hats. You know, I've got the real estate agent hat where I'm servicing my clients. I've got my team leader hat where I need to check in with my admin team on the daily, check in with the agents on my team, make sure everything's running smoothly, make sure that there's nothing needed from me and or just ongoing projects we're working on. I'm Sicilian. I talk with my hands a lot. That will never change. And then I'm a mom and a wife, and I run a household. So I'd say that the biggest word that has become a reality to me is leverage over the years. And I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, before I got into these different roles at the level that I'm in them now, people kept throwing around the word leverage. And I really didn't understand what it meant. But leverage just means figuring out where your time is best spent, figuring out where you're most valuable. Like Gary Keller has the book, The One Thing, and a lot of people follow the 80-20 rule. And so I've really adapted that into my life, and over time have it's a constant working process to get more efficient at all 3 roles, right? And figuring out what's the most important thing for me to do each day. I believe that the next day starts the night before. So you need to kind of have an idea of how your day is going to go the night before. And getting that rest, having your goals set out, whether you write them out, whether you put them in your phone somewhere, and figuring out the most important things that you need to attack each day and executing.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that was awesome.
And let's just dig into that a little bit. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
Because you said a lot of good things that are interesting, and I think just with the clients I deal with, it's a concept that comes up. Yeah. So we'll go down that path. So 80-20 rule, aka Pareto's principle, which is spend 80% of your time with 20% of activities. It could be whatever, like spend 80% of your time with the top 20% of your people, or spend 80% of your time on the top 20% of your task. However you want to do it. There's another way to look at it. And I think it came from Warren Buffett. It's called the avoid all cost list, or the avoid at all cost.
Yes.
So we've all probably experienced this, but as you take on more responsibility, there's all these things that are coming at you, and most people struggle with getting things done, right? They end the day and they're like, I did a bunch of stuff, but what exactly did I do?
Right.
And there's a ton of models, but usually what you end up doing are the things that are urgent and that are in your face, when the most important things are probably not urgent but important. And so what Warren Buffett says is, like, everything you have to do is you take your top 3 things, you circle them, and you mark out everything else. Everything else that's marked out is your avoid at all cost list. They seem like they might be important, but they're really taking away from the really important things. And I think that's one of the biggest things I see owners struggling with, because there's so many things you can do, and you know it's important, but actually not getting distracted by them is a huge challenge. My thought.
I agree. I think that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what else to say to that.
Well, so, like, how do you prevent that? I mean, it's easy to say you know it, but, like, is there anything you do? You said nighttime routine. Is there anything else that you do?
So the biggest thing that I notice, like, for example, I'm going to put on my mom and wife hat for a minute. So I know, for example, if my kids' uniforms aren't clean and prepped for the week, I'm going to have a rough. Every morning is going to be a rough morning, because I'm going to be looking for this or that. So Sunday, I have to get things prepped. And if I have a busy real estate Sunday, then I got to do it on Saturday. Yeah. And if I have a really busy weekend with real estate, which sometimes does happen, then I will get them off on Monday, and then I'll take some time Monday morning to get everything done. And that means go to the grocery store, make sure my refrigerator is ready to make those lunches, to get those snacks if the babysitter's there. Just making sure everybody's good with what they need. And then I turn my attention, and I have to, you got to take care of home first, right? So I make sure that, and I also have a lot of support with parents and grandparents. Shout out to the Grammys in my life. Who you are. Could not do any of this without you. So that's part 1. Part 2 is, Miracle Mornings. Have you heard of that?
No.
So, you haven't heard of Miracle
Mornings? That sounds really familiar, but no, I don't.
Okay, we're going to to talk about that a little bit. So, on the airplane, they say, put your mask on first, take care of you.
Yeah.
So that's like, if your day is going to get out of control and you're not going to have time to work out or to meditate or to read or do whatever it is that you need to do to set yourself straight, you've got to do those things, or you're never going to have control over your own vibe, your own mindset, right? So for me, I know when I have the best mornings is when I go to bed early the night before, have everything set up for the next day. I get to the gym in the morning, which I'm not saying happens all the time.
Did you go to the gym this morning?
I didn't, because I'm recovering from a cold.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to push it. So, but I
Just
wanted
let it
to. I wanted to, and I considered it, but I didn't. But I most likely will tomorrow. So those are the best mornings for me. I come home, I'm amped up. I'm like Mary Poppins with my kids. Like, come on, let's get dressed. Make the breakfast, get them out the door, get myself ready for work. I get to work earlier. I have a lot of energy. I'm with my team. I energize them, and I have great days. So I think it starts in the morning. I think it's about goal setting and having that intention. And when I fall off of that and I get a little lazy and I get a little slumpy, it's because I'm not on my game and I got to get back on it.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And I think it's a really important lesson. Another little trick, and you don't have to physically do this, but when you talk about leveraging, when you think about the things you have to do and what you have to do and what you should do and what you need to do, whatever, trying to assign like a dollar value on that task, right? Like, what's your time worth, and what are you spending your time on? And you said you have 2 admins, right?
Yes.
And so what do you need to do? And really, as an owner, it's labor utilization. So everything, almost everything you do should yield an ROI from a revenue perspective. And so I think that's another thing. You don't have to physically write it down, but think like, all right, what's the value of that, or what's the ROI going to be on that?
Well, and I think one of the biggest problems that business owners have is that we're control freaks, right? And you want to do everything yourself. You feel like nobody can do it as good as you, so you can't let go. And you say, okay, here's the job. I'm going to give you the job to do. And they're trying to take it out of your hands, and you're fighting them for it. It's like, let it go. Just let it go.
Right.
And
Amen.
And let them do it, and let them feel good about doing it, and you can free yourself up to go do more important things. So
I love it.
Where's the urgency? What's the highest priority? Go after those things, and let your whatever leverage it is handle the stuff that you don't need to be spending your time on.
I love it. You're giving such good advice.
Thanks.
These are like whether you realize it or not, this is actually
this is a really great first guest.
I appreciate it.
So,
thank you.
So one last piece of advice I think we need to ask her for.
Yep.
So
I'm ready.
we ask every guest this.
Yeah.
If you had to give one piece of advice to aspiring entrepreneurs, what would it be? And the way I frame it is, if you had to do it all over again, what would you tell yourself?
Well, it depends on the type of business that they're in. If they're in the business of people and finding talent, I would say vet that talent and learn what it means to make the right hire. It's taken me a long time to get to a place to understand how to hire the right person. And honestly, even though you might like someone, they may not be right for the seat on that bus, right? So whether you like them or not, you really have to figure out if they're the best fit for you, and you have to be able to let them go if they're not.
I love it.
Being able to let people go is probably the really toughest part. But no, I think it's good advice. I mean, you're just being real. I mean, it's just a fact.
Can I add one thing to that too?
Sure.
No.
I'll go quickly.
Absolutely not. No,
when I've had people that weren't a fit, I rarely haven't had to let them go. What I've found is that I've given them the door and they've walked through it.
Yeah.
I've just opened up the conversation sometimes with, hey, how's it going? Let's
Yeah.
talk. How are you feeling
That's a
about
really
things?
good.
And sit back and let them tell you.
I love it. That's so true. We have so much more to talk about.
Okay.
You got to come back on.
Definitely.
I'd love that.
We're doing another season in Baltimore, so we have to have you back on,
100%.
especially from that perspective.
Sure.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. And thank you guys for those of you who are watching and listening to the Barcast. This has been awesome. So if you're watching, please subscribe. You want to see more such as this. And do you have anything else to
Well, I just want to make sure people know where to find you. So do you want to give a plug?
Oh, sure. So local to Baltimore, key home team of Keller Williams, and we are doing the real estate thing. So Ashira Barbosa, you can look me up. Ashira Barbosa.
We'll provide a link too, so we'll put a
Yep.
link down in there for you.
Yeah,
You got a TikTok?
Happy to help. I don't do TikTok. It's the one thing
We don't
I'm
either.
starting to feel I'm starting to feel a little old with that. I need to keep up with those times. I haven't done TikTok yet.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And always remember, if you don't drink Jack,
You're an ass.
You're an ass.